One thing I feel like we do most is treat our future self as if it's a different person. Treat our past self as if it's a different person. When in reality, all that is who you are in the moment. And I think it's about that influence and realizing that, regardless of what you do, you are who you are now. And it's not necessarily about being patient with circumstance. It's about being present. And I realized this a lot recently because, I feel like a lot of us want to wait for things to just line up for us. A lot of us want to wait for opportunity, and that's not wrong. It's important to be patient with the things you actually desire. But one thing that we need to do more than anything, more than patience, is be present. You can't truly be patient unless you're being present. And I feel like patience without presence just breeds negativity. It's that constant expectation of something in return that I feel like in some ways causes us to, be angered at the world because we feel like we deserve. We feel like we need it. We feel like we're putting something out. We need to be getting something back. And I feel like that conditional nature of, our relationships with ourselves and our desires and our future self makes life not fun. I feel like it's more important to sort of dissociate yourself from your future and past self because they don't really exist. All that really exists is your present self and who you are now. And that's not to say that you can't change and you're not changing, but to say that your past self is just a past present. Your future self is a future present, and it doesn't exist. And the more present you are now, the more present you are in the moment, the more apt you are to, bringing in a future that you actually desire. A lot of us can't take action if we're constantly in our heads about stuff that has yet to happen. You have to kind of make the change yourself and be the person to influence your own life. I feel like that's what's really important. Taking the time to care for yourself and taking the time to just be there. It's not so much about the self-improvement aspect of it. I feel like the more present we are with ourselves, the more presence you achieve as a person, the better you'll be. You can't see the parts of yourself that are seeking out change if you're constantly away from yourself. As perceptive as we are, as analytical as we are at the outside world and around us, how often we're like, oh, I should have done that, oh, I could have done that, oh, that's weird that they did that, do they mean this by that? Are you questioning yourself, asking yourself what you mean by these certain things? And that's not to say get on yourself negatively. That's just to say, we figure out a lot of ourselves in our reactions. And I've said it in multiple videos that I think, all we are really is the reaction, at least externally. All you are is a reaction to your external circumstance. That's the way you're perceived. That's the way you express yourself. You have to be intentional with your expression and realize what your expression means to you. In saying, don't be patient, be present, I don't necessarily mean cast away all your patience. You have to be patient in regard to some of your desires, some of your aspirations, because, it's not always going to come the second. But my thing is, when you're really being present with yourself, when you're really being present with your situations, I feel like patience isn't even something you address. You embody that patience. You are that patience. You are, all those things that you're striving to be all at once. That's what I feel like being present is. Being detached from sort of your expectation, but not in a sense that you don't care what happens, but you want to experience what happens. You're going to be there for it instead of being up here for it. Taking the time to live life your own way. Everyone has a story. You just have to make sure that you're writing your own. And I feel like that's one of the most important realizations I've come to recently is that, no one's going to do it for you. And if you really want that kind of change, and if you really want that kind of, inspiration, motivation, it's something you got to give to yourself. Sometimes you just have to say no to certain things, and sometimes you have to say yes to things you are semi-uncomfortable with. It's when we're uncomfortable, it's when we're moving into spaces that are somewhat bigger than we perceive ourselves to be, that we truly grow. I feel like all of us are infinite. All of us have our own shine in our own way, and we block ourselves in our inability to take action in the moment. And some of that, isn't necessarily from not being present, but being too analytical, too in your mind, too patient. I feel like overthought is overzealous sometimes. And if all you could do is think about it, it's probably not worth thought. It's important to sort of, do things void of thought sometimes. Of course, be moral, be smart about it, but in things that you can just, do to branch out from yourself, to branch out from, this current perception of yourself, I say do it. It's all about broadening who you are and broadening your understanding of who you perceive yourself to be. And in my opinion, you know, being present isn't the only step in broadening yourself. It's also about being realistically optimistic. You know, it's like being able to put yourself in any scenario, having enough confidence in your character or confidence in how present you are. Now, it's not even a confidence thing, because I feel like once you're truly present, you don't even have to. It's not even about confidence. Once you realize that you're living your life for you and you have to write your own story, a good part of you is going to be like, what parts of my story can I write? What's something interesting that I want to write about myself? What's something that I want to provide and add to who I am as a person? I feel like once you come to that sort of mentality, then all that's left for you to do is experience and keep branching out and keep learning more and more. But it all starts with, being present. So like not necessarily taking away your distractions, but taking away the things that take you away from yourself. Because some distractions are good distractions. Like some people draw, they journal, they do art, they, whatever they need to do to feel like themselves. And then there's those things that we do that take away from ourselves, like social media in some sense. And I'm realizing how much comparison and stuff like that really influences the way we interact with the world. Some people won't do stuff. There's stuff I haven't done, just because of other people. And not, and these things would just be solely beneficial to me, and that's what I'm saying. Like it's sort of a battle you have to confront at least once in your life. The realization that who you are is somewhat being pulled by other strings, and you have to be the one to sort of disconnect that strings, disconnect that relationship that you have with comparison, because a lot of time comparison is just you. A lot of time it's just you versus you, and it shouldn't be you versus you. It should be you and you. You should be helping yourself out more than you are putting yourself down. And I feel like a lot of times, I always say I feel like it's important. We go against ourselves. We go against who we are because we hold on so fervently to who we think we are. We don't allow ourselves to expand, not because we don't want to expand, but we don't want to deal with the discomfort of expansion. And it doesn't have to be uncomfortable, and it's not necessarily. I feel like if we approach it with a certain curiosity, like, oh, let me see myself in this situation, oh, let me see how I handle this, then it becomes beautiful once again. At the end of the day, it's about your perspective of it, your perception. How you view the world is how you view the world. And as simple as that is said, like, we all live in our personal heaven or hell. And you have to be the one to decide and dictate whether or not you want to live in heaven or hell. Not in like a religious sense, but just in a sense that, some people suffer and some people prosper. And if it's not up to the circumstance, then it's up to the mind. It's up to your perception. It's up to who you are as a person. And I feel like a lot of times we don't decide that. We don't hold that in our heart. We don't present ourselves with the idea that, maybe it's our perspective that's causing us to be this way, that's causing these things to be this way. I feel like once you come to that, once you realize that, you do influence it. And in some ways, like everything that happens in your life, everything that's around you is somewhat something you're responsible for. The way you talked about somebody a certain day, the way you talk to somebody a certain day, the way you handle this situation. Not saying that you should be regretful or remorseful for anything you've done, unless it's morally wrong. But in things that aren't, there is no should and could have. There's only things you've done. There's not necessarily no point. Learn your lessons and continue to move forward. But don't dwell in the past and in those actions, because it's so much more important to keep going. It's so much more important to be present with yourself now and move forward with the lessons you've learned from the past. The past is there to teach, and The future's there to reach. You gotta somewhat bring it back in. You know, it's about making that future real for yourself. You know, that's a part of being that patience and presence. You know, being grateful for what you have yet to have is a form of patience, and I feel like that's also important. You know, having that elevated feeling associated with a certain desire of yours, and that's what it talks about in Becoming Supernatural, the book that I've been advocating for a while. It's just about keep going, just about keeping that feeling. You know, realizing that you know you have to be the one to give that to yourself, and you're the one that connotates everything you do. So, yeah, being patient, man, being present. It's about life, and I always say like being a life instead of seeing it, but that's really what it is. You know, don't be patient and sit around waiting for life to happen. You know, the more you wait for life to happen, the more it passes you by. It's about embodying it, embodying what you know, sort of want to get out the world, sort of want to get out yourself. It's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be difficult. It's about getting back to you, getting back to your roots, and getting back to your new self in a way. You know, if you realize the self is something that's constantly changing, you realize that you'll never be the person you were before, and that's okay. You know, it's not necessarily about getting back, but getting forward, growing into your new self. You know, becoming a better version of who you are now, not a better version of who you were then, better version of who you are now. You know, that's why I stress the idea that, you know, the journey's never over. Because it's not. You know, it has its ups and downs. It has its lessons. And sometimes, you know, you have those down lessons just to teach you that you need to stay up. You need to stay up on, you know, all your disciplines, all the things that you need to do in order to be you, in order to keep growing. You know, don't be comfortable with yourself, but be comfortable with yourself while you're changing. Then you'll be comfortable in any situation, any circumstance. And I feel like that's just what being present is. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. If you didn't, thank you anyway. I appreciate you all nonetheless. I could probably go live tonight for real. Or not tonight. This is coming out. Day before. Okay. Or day after. So probably gonna go live another day. I went live probably yesterday. So thank you all in all. Keep being you, keep being great. I hope all of you are taking care of yourselves and being intentional with everything you do. And I was wondering, like, did y'all want a new video on like